mercy here. What percentage of American land is owned by Asians?
Not sure.
Yeah, less than 3%. They are the richest racial group in America. So maybe land ownership isn't the only thing that matters to get wealthy.
Well, I do recognize that a lot of components and aspects.
Hold on a second. Why,
come in.
forget the supply chain, forget the land. Land is basically all owned by white people in America, okay? Yet Asians, Indians are by far the richest group. So why is it that this particular group that happens to own the land and the supply chains, and we've admitted it's very hard to run this land, very hard to run this idea of farming in South Africa.
Oh man, these people.
It feels to me, I could be wrong, that it's a group of resentment-driven politics towards a group of people that own land instead of opportunity and empowerment-based politics, talking to the black majority about how they could build a better life for themselves instead of taking away other people's stuff.
Well, maybe the question could be as well, why do you think white South Africans that pretty much acquired that land through unjust means are so apprehensive and they don't really want to break even or probably give up much of the land that was stolen?
Hold on, that's a mindset issue. There's plenty in America that gets labeled as quote unquote stolen. Plenty. However, it doesn't necessarily always hold back every ethnic group that is in the country, that is even in the minority of the country. And so I guess the question is, it's a mindset. I don't know South African law enough. I don't know if it's a free market base. I really don't. I'm not just playing cute. But as a general operating principle, it's very bad to build a political movement around taking other people's stuff because obsessed with what you don't have instead of the mental energy to create what you want and what you think you deserve. We've seen this with a lot of groups to America. And America is a very interesting petri dish because we have a lot of people that come to our country with nothing. We have Cubans, we have Venezuelans, we have Colombians, we have Persians. And a rule is the group that complains the least and focuses all of their combined cultural energy on creation does really well over multiple years. That might not be possible in South Africa. There might be like no process to create wealth, but I would just venture a guess that market principles transcend borders. So my postulation, and I'm glad you admitted it, don't say kill the Boers, bad, we should say that. It has created real deaths and real harm. If I was in charge, which of course I'm not, I would spend all my time not saying kill the Boer. I would say, my people, get your act together. Let's work harder. Let's prove the Boer wrong. Let's start a business. Let's build families. One is driven in resentment and greed and envy and confiscation, and one is rooted in creation and entrepreneurship and optimism. I'd like to see the latter.
Well, it's very interesting you call it confiscation. What about if we call it probably reclaiming the land that was stolen back in the day? Yeah, but here's the thing as well.
Fair, okay, but can I please, okay.
Maybe as well, kind of understanding the value of land, right? Much of what happens with land is obviously, and I think a very prominent economist talks about this, a guy called Hernando de Soto in his book, The Mystery of Capital.
I know Hernando de Soto.
Yeah, he talks about it really. When it comes to land, the value of...
Wow, okay, so this was okay, first of all, right, this guy who is debating Kirk, it's not like Charlie Kirk, like this is what he does. First of all, I don't think the guy debating knows what he's talking about. I mean, he might know what he's talking about, right? But I don't think he's a debater. So he's not bringing out the point. He's not on point with it. So it's a bit weak. But let me address some of the things. And now, just like Kirk, right? I'm not well versed in South African politics and the in and outs of, of South Africa, the, post-apartheid regime. But there are certain things that with a layman's perspective, you have to understand. Now, he talked about, one of the questions he raised was, he says, why hasn't South Africa been able to grow their economic network post-apartheid? Even though they're the majority, like the black South African are the majority, it seems they have a defeatist attitude, which plays a factor. But that's not just the point, right? It's not just a defeatist attitude. That's part of it, because you cannot run away from it. It's the psyche of the people after going through years of oppression. That is not just the reason, right? I think he fails to understand that there's been an ingrained, like a systemic ingrained, inequalities and racism that persist within the country. The systems that were created in apartheid, they were not all dismantled all of a sudden post-apartheid. So there's what, just like here, there's systemic racism within the South African environment. And this is just me thinking on a layman's perspective as to why, from Kirk's questions, why Black South Africans are not progressing as quickly as he would like them to progress. Is one, because the system is rigged against the people, right? I mean, I've been to SA before, and I've heard of, some jobs whereby you have to speak Afrikaans to be able to get those jobs. Those things are like, that's crazy. That's systemic racism. That's things that are ingrained within the society that prevent some people from getting opportunities. So apart from that, he also talks about, he compares America to South Africa. Context matters. Like, you cannot compare the US to South Africa. The US, apart from land ownership, he talks about the fact that land ownership is not the only way to make money. Are you kidding me? Africa is not the same thing as the US. Before industrialization, even up till now, most Africans' livelihoods, especially in the rural areas, are through agriculture and is from their land. People sow crops, they go to the market, they sell, and they use that to train their kids. Some people sell lands, and they use that to train their children in university and school. So it's not the same as the US, whereby land is not like the focus of, like, land is not a means of income for majority of people, because America has been able to create systems whereby people can make money through other means. So it's kind of different. You can't compare the two together. So I think that that's kind of a flawed way of thinking about it, because contexts do matter. And, and more opportunities are very much accessible here in the US. Then his postulation after everything was that, that South Africans need to get themselves together and just build and stop confiscating people's lands. And this is where this young man came in, and he talked about the fact it's not actually confiscation. It's people taking what was actually theirs, which I don't know. I've asked this question before. South Africans who listen to my channel, you can help me out. Like, originally, who does the lands in South Africa belong to? Did it belong to the blacks, or was it the whites who came and acquired the lands first? That's one thing that we need to get straight. But I think, Kirk faced to understand that the legacy of apartheid, it lives on. It doesn't just disappear. So the systems that are in South Africa, I believe, are still kind of rigged. It's not like, clear. And then you have to talk about the white nepotism. Like, nepotism is one great thing, right? So, there's a persistency of white ownership in key industries and companies that limit economic gains and political influence for Black South Africans, which you cannot just dismiss that. It's something that is real and it's within the country. And this is just me speaking out of mere understanding of when things happen like that. I'm not an expert in South Africa. So I'm just kind of talking, and anyone who has more insight, please correct me, right? And, also we can talk about lack of effective policies as well. So, efforts to address inequalities through various Black economic empowerment, the BEE movement has been criticized a lot, for not adequately addressing the underlying structural issues. You also have, persistent inequalities. So despite some improvements that have happened in South Africa, I believe that, there's income inequality, there are racial disparities, within various sectors that persist. I've heard of the fact that there's a place where only white South Africans can go. And only white folks live in those areas. No matter how small or how we might say, oh, that's just a minor, but that stuff has a very huge impact in a larger scale of how people view things in South Africa. For a set of people to have their own place, that's huge. So I think there are just a lot of things. Of course, we cannot forget government corruption, right? So, there are some corrupt human beings in the government who are not doing what they're supposed to do to make sure that there's economic empowerment and equality is realized. And this is my take, this is my full chest take. I think that whenever we have such a country that undergoes such a struggle or such oppression for years, we can't just say, oh, because they have, maybe because you see a black South African is the president or they are the majority of the people, it does not mean that the system that was created, because I understand like white, the people the white colonizers or white apartheid people, they were not daft. They were very intelligent, and they didn't just say, oh, this is just going to happen for now. Things were put in place to make sure that even though, the apartheid is over, they enjoyed that time and they wouldn't want to relinquish power. So there's this, it's not in your face. You can't see it. It's kind of, de facto and not de jure anymore. So it's still there. But, maybe no, it's no longer there. We can't see it clearly. But they create systems to enforce those things, because who wants to relinquish power? Who wants to get rid of power? Nobody wants to do that, really. People want to keep enjoying what they were enjoying forever and ever if they can. So I don't think that it's just as easy as what he said. I think that there are more, various things, unequal access to resources. I don't think black South Africans have the same access to resources as white South Africans do. There's various forms of discrimination that is systemic within the environment of the country that stops people from, especially black South Africans, gaining access to a lot of things. And until all those things are addressed, you can't just say, oh, black South Africans should stop taking people's things away. They should just come together and let's build together and find ways to get out of poverty and kumbaya their way out. No, I disagree. That's not what it is. There are systems that have been put in place. And if people want to be honest with themselves, they will be honest with themselves that they've put in systems to stop black South Africans from rising. Maybe there's always the people who make it. But majority of if you go to the townships in South Africa, it's poverty, So, and I'm not saying the white South Africans are totally to be blamed for this. No, black South Africans are also to be blamed for it, right? Everyone has their part to play, but we can't just say that, oh, black South Africans are the ones holding themselves. No, there are systems that have been put in place that is against black South Africans. There's access to resources is not the same. It's not equal at all. But again, like I mentioned, it's not just the white South Africans. Black South Africans they have a role to play as well. Once again, I'm not a South African, so I'm just speaking out of a layman's perspective. But yeah, if you're from South Africa, let me know what you think about the debate. Let me know areas that they got wrong, and let me know areas that I got wrong as well. Until next time, guys, it's Food Chest. Peace.